Hello, and welcome to part one of the 2016 ALA Midwinter ALCTS Virtual Symposium, The Data Lifecycle and the Landscape of Library-Led Services. I'm Robin Champeau, and I will be your host for today's webinar. A few things to keep in mind for today's presentation. This webinar does not have interactive chat capabilities. If you wish to comment on today's presentation using Twitter, you may use the hashtag you see on the screen. We will not be monitoring the Twitter feed, however. In order to minimize any background noise, all attendees are muted. If you have questions for us, which we welcome, please type them into the questions box on the right side of your screen. We will answer them through the presentation. Questions that remain unanswered while we're on air will be answered offline if we run out of time, and the answers will be sent to all attendees. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive an email with links to the recording, the presentation slides, and an evaluation within 2 days. All right, so our presenters today are myself. I'm the Scholarly Communication Librarian at Oregon Health and Science University. Jennifer Doty, who is the Research Data Librarian at Emory University. Christopher Eager, the Data Curation Librarian at the University of Tennessee. And Jackie Wirtz, my colleague here at Oregon Health and Science University, who is our Research Data Ninja. A brief overview of part one of this virtual symposium. So this is today's agenda. We'll begin with an overview of the research life cycle. Then we'll drill into a closer look at the data life cycle, really connecting it to different kinds of library expertise and services. Jackie will introduce us to the Gummy Bear Challenge, which we'll then take a second look at next week, and we'll learn more about that today. We'll go into an overview of the RDM service landscape, or the Research Data Management Service landscape, and then we'll end on 3 case studies, and then pick up again on Thursday with part 2. So with that, I'll introduce Jen, who will kick us off with an overview of the research life cycle.
Hey, thanks, Robin.
You're welcome.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to begin with an overview of the research life cycle and how it intersects with academic libraries' roles and expertise. I'm going to highlight where libraries fit throughout the research process, touching briefly on traditional services that are offered and expanding upon emerging data-related services. So this discussion of the research life cycle is adapted from a very well laid out graphic that the University of Central Florida Libraries developed and shared, where the entire research life cycle is mapped out with corresponding support from units and offices, including the libraries around their campus. We'll take each phase of the life cycle in turn and pay special attention to the services libraries provide, both current and emerging. So at the point when researchers are developing project ideas and proposals, they've traditionally sought out and availed themselves of help from libraries to conduct literature reviews and incorporate citation management tools into their research workflow. However, as researchers encounter new requirements from funders to include data management plans, libraries have seized the opportunity, pardon me, have seized the opportunity to support this through a variety of methods: workshops, one-on-one consultations and reviews of plans, and with institutional access to online tools like the Data Management Planning or DMP tool. Researchers are, we found, most appreciative of services that lighten some of that information overload they may be experiencing to address requirements that are new to them, developing their first proposal. And then going on from the planning cycle, often researchers find themselves full on into the project cycle, And in the course of that, may be seeking help to analyze and describe their data. This usually gets a chuckle in live presentations, even to non-librarians, but webinars are really not a great way to get immediate audience feedback. So, moving right along, as longtime describers of information, libraries are often well poised to assist with metadata guidance, including recommending and selecting standards. Several libraries have examples of very usable templates to do something called a README file that would accompany data deposited in their repositories. And those README files can actually have useful applications to reside with the data sets wherever their eventual destination. Your library may or may not include a dedicated data center, but many libraries have worked with faculty and students who are looking to locate and acquire data sets for use in their research and teaching, and they may provide access to specialized software. Support of this kind continues to play an important role in data services and can be highlighted as another way that data management services are being supported and developed. While library support for traditional publishing activities may not have aligned with data services at all research universities, it can often fit well when libraries work with researchers to help ensure compliance with emerging public access requirements, both to articles and data funded by federal agencies. In many cases, academic journals already have or are developing policies to make data underlying articles accessible for the long term. Though definitions of what actually constitutes long term may actually vary. And then the digital products of scholarship are also increasingly supported by library services, notably institutional repositories that have been developed and are managed in academic libraries. Whether your institution's repository provides a place to share and archive research data or not, staff who are affiliated with that service are often knowledgeable about other aspects of scholarly communication, such as rights considerations and licensing of research outputs, and they're well positioned to assist with guidance in selecting an appropriate long-term home for research data. Some institutional repositories and related services also provide a feature of increasing attraction to scholars too, in the form of alternative metrics, such as keeping track of views, downloads, or even citations of published works. And that was a bit of a whirlwind tour of the research lifecycle as defined by library support and services. And now I'll go ahead and hand things over to Chris to do a deeper dive into the data lifecycle.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Jen talked about the overall research lifecycle, kind of from the high-level view and the view of the researcher, and going on behind the scenes, the data goes through its own lifecycle. So we're going to talk about the data lifecycle from just from the data's viewpoint, and talk about things that researchers do to data during these different phases, and also kind of touch upon a little bit of the things that that libraries can offer at each of these phases. So this is the data lifecycle that I'm going to use today. This one was adapted from the data lifecycle developed by Data One, which is a large National Science Foundation funded project. And there are many data lifecycles out there. If you do a Google search for one, you're bound to find multiple ones, but this is the one that I'm most familiar with and that I like. So this is essentially just an idealized lifecycle to show what generally data, what phases data goes through on a typical project. It's not intended to be universal on every project. Not every project will go through every phase, and not necessarily every phase will go through and be gone through in this order, but it's just to point out the things that researchers and libraries who are assisting researchers need to think about. So starting out with the planning phase, this encompasses the things that researchers do before the research actually starts. They plan for what type of data they need, who all is going to be involved in the project, and this is where the data management plan comes in, and this is also a good place where librarians can assist researchers in meeting that requirement for the data management plan. Then when they start the project, they begin collecting data, and this is the phase where data is collected from sensors, from if it's human subjects, from surveys or from interviews or from the atmosphere, whatever it is that the researcher is collecting, and this is the phase in which it happens. After data is collected, they want to make sure that the data are clean and are free from errors, so they go through quality assurance and quality control checks to ensure that the data are free from errors. And there are different checks that they can do, like plotting data on a graph or finding outliers, and then they can check to see if that outlier is a true outlier that they want to keep, or if it's an actual error that they want to replace. Now the describe phase, this is where metadata comes in, and although it's shown as one phase on the life cycle, it really ought to be considered along the entire life cycle. And so the description is metadata. That's everything about the data, about the research project, about the people involved, and about everything that someone who wants to reuse the data might need to know. So that's the description phase. Of course, that should happen throughout all phases of the research life cycle. And moving on to the analysis phase, this is of course where the data are taken and analyzed in such a way that the researcher can try to find the findings that he's interested in, or see what the data are telling him, so that he or she can then report that. And then preservation is where the data are preserved for long term, or at least for a term long enough to be able to recreate the data, the research project if necessary. This is where data publication also comes in play a lot of times, where researchers are putting their data out and making it public in places that also preserve the data so that others can reuse that data. And others, wrong direction. And others can then discover the data that has been made public and preserved in data repositories or data centers, and then they can then use that data in their own research. And of course, metadata is essential for data discovery, so that people can find the data using the appropriate search terms that they are interested in. And then the integration phase is, of course, is when researchers have located or discovered data sets that have been made public, and then they need to integrate them into one single data set that would be useful for their particular research project. Oftentimes, a researcher won't be able to find one data set that will meet all of their needs, so they'll need to pick and choose from multiple data sets and then integrate those into one for their use. And it all leads us back to planning again, and the cycle kind of goes around in circles. So at this point, I will pause for any questions, just to see if there are any questions about anything that we've covered thus far. And I don't see any questions in the box, but you're welcome to put them in. And at this point, I'll pass it on over to Jackie.
Hi, Jackie, it may be that you're on mute. Hello.
Hello?
Hello, I'm sorry, this is Robin. Somehow my sound went out. Is there something you need me to add in?
Can everybody hear me?
This is Robin, Jackie. I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Sorry. You know, all of the technology in the world, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to go correctly. So I want to thank Chris and Jen for covering the research and the data lifecycle. And I'm just going to take a quick aside here to talk a little bit about my experiences with both. I come from a background in research science, and one thing that I find really exciting about librarianship in this modern day and age is how we can really be involved on both the research and the data lifecycles on brand new and really deeply engaging levels. So I want to throw that out there and something to kind of chew on in the back of your mind as we start thinking about the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is the gummy bear exercise. And then one last thing that I want to point out is I think that the research cycle is really something that has been very classically defined according to the research and publishing paradigms of traditional research. But we are in the new era of technology where webinars may or may not go smoothly, but it is truly a change in how we are communicating both scholarly and research and raw data, and there are so many exciting avenues out there that are really being more covered in depth in the data lifecycle. So one thing that I think about that's exciting time for libraries as the research community transitions from more of a traditional look at the research cycle to the data lifecycle, I think this provides us with a really great opportunity to step in there and become not only people that are assisting with research endeavor, but people that are actively engaged with the entire research endeavor and the entire data lifecycle. So, having said that, right now I want to talk a little bit about an exercise that we have come up with that really helps engage people in deep discussion about what their current practices are in the scholarly communication cycle and the research data lifecycle itself. And this is something we call the Gummy Bear Groundbreaking Paper Experiment. So, one thing that we have found is that when talking with researchers, sometimes it's difficult to find some really good neutral ground to talk to them about their research data. People work on really disparate data sets out there. Some people are working on imaging data, some people are working on hard numerical data, some people are working on qualitative data. When working with them, it's really important to try and tailor your message to them. So when it comes to creating a group exercise, it gets a little difficult because while you want to tailor your exercise as much as possible, you also need to be cognizant of trying to address multiple types of data sets that are out there. So with that in mind, we came up with the gummy bear exercise as kind of a fun and facetious way of trying to engage researchers. But as you will see, the gummy bear exercise incorporates a couple of different data types, making it something that's accessible to researchers from a wide swath of the research community. So, what exactly is the gummy bear paper? This is an opportunity for librarians to help raise researchers' awareness of what they do and do not know regarding research data management and the data lifecycle through an exercise that's designed to engage people in conversation. So, the groundbreaking paper can be found at libguides.ohsu.edu/gummybear. Now, what you can find there is a zip file that you can download to your personal machines. We ask participants to download this data and information at the very beginning of the workshop. So everybody has their local instance of this information, and they will be working with the raw data on their machines in small groups. With the raw data, what we ask participants to do is we ask them to take a look at it, and inside the raw data you will find a couple of different things. There are a variety of file folders that are pre-designed and are in the zip file. Some of these contain actual files, some of them do not. They are just there as an example of how someone may have set up their file directory structure. Included in this is information about our test subject, the Haribo Gummy Bears sugar-free 5-pound bag. This is directly linked to an Amazon.com listing where people can get more information about the gummy bears. It includes an image, the anatomy of a gummy bear, which is provided to us graciously through Jason Freeney, who is a fabulous graphic design artist and created this beautiful anatomy picture for humorous use, but is something that we've co-opted for this particular exercise. That is an image in the images file. We also have Spring-O-Matic data, which is a spreadsheet of a little bit of information, which is shown here on this slide, that describes an experiment that has been performed that measures the bounces and amplitude of a gummy bear's belly button being depressed according to the gummy bear color. Now, all of this information is provided in these file folders, and we ask people to open up the data, unzip it, and then explore around and see what information is provided to them. They should be familiar with all of the data that's being provided, and some of this information does have README files, some of this information does come with additional information in the spreadsheet about experimental design, etc. So there is a couple of pieces of information for people to really familiarize themselves with as they engage in this exercise. Once people have downloaded the information and have gotten a chance to look around, then we ask them to engage in the actual exercise itself, which is going to be shown here. And I am trying valiantly to get this to advance, and my computer is fighting with me.
Hi, Jackie, this is Robin. What slide do you need me to go to?
Just the next one, please.
Yep. There we go. Is that right?
I am still seeing the data slide, the raw data slide.
All right. Let's try that again. Sorry, everyone. Bear with us for just a moment here.
I see in the questions that someone asked if we can share the gummy bear paper and teaching materials. Absolutely. The libguides.ohsu.edu/gummybear, that URL is a link to a LibGuide that has the entire exercise written out, in addition to a white paper that we wrote about the exercise itself. We have since offered this exercise several different ways, and I will talk a little bit more about that. And you guys will be engaging in the exercise. So what I am asking of you is, all participants, is to go to that website, download the files, and participate in the challenge. And as soon as we can get you to the next slide, which shows you exactly what the challenge is. But I really encourage everyone to participate, and I'm going to ask that you send your results to me as soon as we get there. So we are still trying to get to the technology to work so we can advance to the next slide. But yes, please definitely check out that URL and check out the white paper that goes along with it.
Okay, here, trying this again. Sorry, Jackie.
This is the task. Okay. So what we're asking participants to do at this point in time, and what I'm asking for you guys to do between today's webinar and Thursday's webinar, is to take a look at that data and create a figure and a figure legend containing, 1, an annotated image of the belly button of a gummy bear, and 2, a graph that displays the springiness by gummy bear color. Again, this is a 2-part figure and figure legend that contains an annotated image of the belly button of the gummy bear, and secondly, springiness by gummy bear color. So this is going to require that the participants work with both the image itself, getting some experience working with images, and then also a little bit of data crunching by using the raw data that was provided in the zip file to calculate the springiness by gummy bear color and create a graph of it. And as a last little task in this particular challenge is to create a methods section describing the experiment and the analysis. Again, create a methods section describing the experiment and the analysis. So once participants have unzipped the data and have a chance to look around, we ask them to do this, to create the figure and the methods section. We give them about 30 to 40 minutes in small groups to work on this. We had shortened it originally to something like 20 minutes, but we found that they need a little bit more time. We really encourage people to walk around and ask lots of questions. And then what I'm going to ask of you participants is to complete the Gummy Bear Challenge, create the figure legend, and create the method section. And then secondarily, examine the data life cycle and map how your workflow and your work product through the Gummy Bear Challenge may or may not have followed the cycle. So I know that right now there's probably a lot of questions from people out there regarding details of the challenge. And I can freely address some of these, and I'm going to take a quick look at the questions box. But one thing about the challenge is to let people kind of have a lot of questions, because if we answer all of the questions, then they're not going to get quite as much out of the challenge. So let me take a look at the questions box. Will you be able to share the teaching materials? Yes, I already discussed that. Who do you usually do this challenge with? Faculty members, librarians, etc.? The answer is everybody. We've done this challenge initially with a group of students. It primarily pitched at graduate students. However, subsequently, I have performed this little experiment and challenge with librarians, with faculty, with administrators, and those results are really hilarious, and then with postdocs. We've done this with clinical researchers as well as with basic science researchers. There are some things that you can do to tailor this challenge to those respective audiences, and I'll discuss those a little bit next time we meet on Thursday. But this challenge is designed to be really, really flexible, and I encourage everyone to kind of customize it to your unique instance when you're offering the challenge. So that is what I am asking of you, and that is an introduction to the Gummy Bear Challenge. Please participate in the challenge. Produce a figure and figure methods and all that information, and please send it to me at wordsj@ohsu.edu. And we will be looking at everybody's results on Thursday and discussing exactly how this challenge maps up to the data lifecycle and how this challenge can be used as a teachable moment in research data management through all participants. So that is the Gummy Bear Challenge, and at this point we're going to transition into a little bit more of a discussion about how the RDM service landscape is set up.
Jackie, and sorry for interrupting Chris, just a moment here. This is Robin. I just want to take a moment to pause and answer some of the additional unanswered questions. We have one, if you could maybe navigate back to the link where the exercise material lives, that would be great for just a moment. We have someone asking about that link. Let's see here. Thank you. Jackie, can you please navigate back to where your link lives? Okay. And then we also have one additional question, and I'm hoping, Jackie, maybe you can start answering this one, and then if needed, I can add additional information as well. We have a question asking which ontologies are used for metadata to describe data sets?
Oh, that really varies. Are you asking about the Gummy Bear data set?
No, this question came in earlier in our slide, so I think it's a general question.
That actually is a fabulous question, and the answer really depends on the data set. There are a multitude of ontologies that exist out there, and many of them are tailored to the types of data that they are describing. So when it comes to the ontologies that you should use or the metadata schema for any given data set, it really should be something that is tailored to the actual data set itself. Mm-hmm. Having said that, however, there are some very large overarching ontologies that should be at least reference to, because the overarching goal of the new data landscape is not only to make your data accessible to people within your research community, but also to be cognizant of others that might use your data in new and exciting ways. And that means that you're going to have to be a little bit flexible when applying ontologies and metadata schema to make them as broadly applicable as possible. So when it comes to the metadata schema, Dublin Core is a really broad ontology that you can take a metadata schema that you can take a look at that that will help you figure out some broad terms that might be applicable to a larger population. And when it comes to ontology, there's the obo ontology, which is the biology ontology, which is a really kind of broad one that covers a lot of buckets. And then again, there are just so many different ones out there. It's just a good idea, I think, to really take a step back from the granularity of the data set and then maybe just think one step larger. So if I'm working with cancer imaging data, then maybe in addition to the ZFIN data ontologies that exist for zebrafish, if that's my model organisms, to take a step back and think about the larger neuroscience community and find an ontology and metadata schema that is more applicable to that larger community, and then use those. So I can't give any one bucket answer for which ontology or metadata schema is best, but just always have an eye towards larger community sharing.
And I'll just add, this is Robin again, that a couple resources, or at least one resource, and this is for the life sciences, but a great example of sort of mining some of those ontologies, those domain-specific ontologies, is to take a look at biosharing, which is a curated searchable portal of data standards and does include some indexed ontologies, and that's sort of a nice one, I think, to sort of get a sense of what might be available. I think the other thing to keep in mind in terms of ontologies and data sharing is that there may be ontologies that are appropriate for better describing and making more interoperable sort of the domain of the data itself. Jackie, maybe it's cellular data, for example. But there's also ontologies that might be really powerful for describing the collection methods themselves, or if it's imaging data, how the data was imaged, so sort of more the technical data production methods. And used in tandem, it can really make the data really powerful for potential reuse.
Yes, and also someone had mentioned that OHSU was involved in one such mapping project. Yes, yeah. That is the Monarch Initiative, and what that is doing is trying to map phenotype to genotype across a variety of model organism systems, and part of that mapping involves making sure that the ontologies and the control vocabularies and metadata involved with all of the existing systems can work interoperably with each other and feed that information across model organisms. So that is very specific to the biological life sciences, but that is an excellent example of how ontologies are being used to connect interesting data sets that might not have been connected before. It's a very large project and it's something that is quite complex. There are all sorts of fascinating little nuances to how these things will connect to each other. But that is a fabulous example of an ontology that's trying to be built to bring things together.
And we have one more question. It says, are you going to send us the recording and slides today? And it's my understanding that those will be out within 48 hours. Okay, now Chris, I think we're ready for you.
Okay. All right, now let's zoom in. Let's zoom in just a little more to the landscape of our research data management services that you may find yourself in, or you may be interested in developing within your library. We have taken, I'm trying to get my slide to advance. Okay. All right, there we go. I have taken this model of categories of services from a paper that's referenced at the bottom of this slide, so basically we're looking at the different types of services you might offer within your library regarding research data management based on these three main categories of education, consultation, and infrastructure. Education is just what it says. That's teaching researchers and others about good data management practices and about how to write data management plans, or anything having to do with research data management. Consultation is is when you work with researchers either one-on-one or in groups to help them work through issues that they may be encountering as they go through a research project. And then infrastructure are the actual nuts and bolts of servers and repositories and things like that. So these three main categories are pretty much encompass the types of services you might offer. And then we also looked at it within below these categories in different levels of investment of your time, not only your time but also your money. And so we broke these services up into low levels of investment in time and medium and then high. And so of course the low level of investment of money and time would be the services that you might want to start out with that kind of dip your toe in the water to get going with research data management services at your university. And so I'm going to go on now and just kind of give some brief examples of services you might offer within these different categories, and then examples at each level of investment within those categories. Starting with education. This is usually a pretty easy, education is usually a pretty easy category to get started in. A low level of investment within the education category might be providing online resources for researchers on your campus. And this is usually accomplished through LibGuides platform. I would imagine most of you on this call have some sort of a research guide platform that you use, and LibGuides is a big one. So many universities have produced LibGuides on research data management on how to create data management plans. So that's a pretty simple low-level investment that you might consider. Next, the medium level of investment might be to offer one-off workshops on issues such as how to create a data management plan or how to create metadata for your research. I do one-off workshops. I do 2 separate workshops every semester in our Office of Research, one on how to create a data management plan and one on the basics of research data management best practices. And so these are just one-time workshops. They're not like one semester-long courses, so they really don't take as much effort, but they do take some preparation work and some education on your own. And then, of course, a high level of investment would be to offer a semester-long course on research data management best practices. And some universities have done this, and so it's an actual 4-credit course that's offered through any number of different departments on campus, but it would be over the long course of a semester and touch on all aspects of data management in detail. Consultation is the next category of service, and an example of consultations within a low level of investment area would be to provide help with writing data management plans as researchers request help. And this is a fairly easy service to get into. You just need to learn about the requirements by the grant agencies on what they require for data management plans, look at some examples of good data management plans, and then provide assistance to researchers as needed. A medium level of investment in the consultation Robin, would you advance? Thanks. I can't seem to get it from my end. The medium level investment would be to offer a best practices workshop, and this is more of a instead of just offering help on one-on-one on a as requested basis, you set up an actual workshop and you talk to researchers as a group and you guide them through more details about data management plans, and you might even offer to review data management plans as part of that workshop. And then if you're moving to the high end of the spectrum of a level of investment, you can actually get written into a grant. And if you can, if a researcher feels like that a librarian might lend some value to a grant in helping them in managing the research data through that grant, then you can get written into a grant that way and actually be on, be part of that grant and be the onboard research data management specialist to help with that throughout the project. And that, of course, takes a lot of time. And then infrastructure is the last category that we're talking about, and a low level of investment within the infrastructure category would be to offer your researchers on campus the data management plan tool. Now, the data management plan tool is an online tool that is free for anyone to use, and it is a step-by-step guide on how to create data management plans for close to 25 different grant funding agencies at this time, including all the subdirectorates of the National Science Foundation. Any university can get started using the data management plan. There are some additional requirements for people who want to be able to customize the data management plan for their institution, but anyone can go in and create a generic login and use the data management plan to create data management plans, or the DMP tool, that is, to create data management plans. So that would be a pretty low level of investment to offer your researchers. A medium level investment would be to help researchers when they need to archive and preserve research data in external data repositories, and that's data repositories that are not within your university but might be housed elsewhere in other data centers. Then you would need to be more familiar with the requirements for what that data repository expects as far as the preparation of the data sets, and then be the guide and help the researcher move that data from their servers into the data repository servers, and help them to prepare that data as expected by the repository. So that takes a little more of your time as well, and is in additional education on your part. And then last, the high level investment would be for your library to set up and run its own in-house data repository, which many universities or many libraries within universities are doing these days, and that gives you a lot more control over the types of information that you might accept, but of course that takes a lot of time and money and personnel, and that's so that's a very high level investment that you might want to wait and hold off on for the future. And so now we're going to talk about some different case studies that where universities have developed different services, and then tie these case studies back to those levels of investment and categories of service.
Thanks, Chris. And before we move into the case studies, actually, I think we want to do a brief poll. So let's get this started here, just to get a sense. Okay,
I forgot about the poll.
No problem.
So, yeah, the poll is I'm just going to give you about 15 or 20 seconds and just tell me if your institution has data management services, which category do they fall in? We just kind of want to get an idea of where we are with this group.
All right there. And Chris, can you see the results, or do you need me to read those out to you?
I can see the results.
Thanks.
Yeah, it looks like of 85% of people who voted, education is the largest group, and I would imagine that those who didn't vote might be the group that says we don't have any services, and I apologize for neglecting to leave the none option off of that poll. But so we look at education of 65% of the people who vote, and that's 85% of the people voted in this poll. So that's interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And now, Jackie, off to you.
Thanks, Chris. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some specific case studies. Now, one thing that I am going to be presenting here is the fact that a lot of these don't traditionally jump off and say, hey, we're teaching RDM. I really, really feel that there are so many fabulous courses out there. For example, Amanda Whitmire has a great RDM class that she developed at Oregon State University that exists that specifically and targetedly address research data management from the get-go. What I'll be presenting are several different examples of connecting to the research community in kind of stealth ways. These topics are definitely related to the research data lifecycle and research data management, but we are presenting them to the participants in slightly different flavors. So you'll see a little bit more clearly as I get going, but we're going to just keep that in mind, that I'm not directly addressing offering a class in RDM. We're going to talk a little bit more about things like repositories later on. These are just some alternative ways of engaging the researcher population outside of traditional RDM services and education that are straight up RDM. So I'm going to start, presumably that I get control of the keyboard here. Looks like we're in the right area. I'm going to start by talking about data visualization, and this is looking good not only for the people that are trying to make better data visualizations. It's a great way for the library to look really good. So data visualization is something that I had as a personal interest of mine stemming from my research career. I worked in a field that made some really awesome visualizations, and it was really important to me that people put their visualizations together carefully and cognizant of some of the basic principles of visual design. When I transitioned into the library role, I found that a lot of people really didn't receive formal training in data visualizations along the researcher spectrum. So one thing that I started to do was offer one-off workshops on data visualization, and these were really, really well attended. So well attended, in fact, that we actually had the dean of the School of Medicine sitting on the ground at one of these workshops. So that gave us the inclination that we needed to offer something a little bit more formal. So the need for data visualization was that at OHSU there were no real existing resources. People just went off and did data visualization as best they could, usually teaching themselves as they went along. So the impact that we had was these workshops were just simply overfilled. So we developed a short class in conjunction with a teacher from our computer science and spoken language understanding unit. So we had myself as a librarian and also our collaborator as a computer scientist coming together to give this class on data visualization. It was absolutely packed to the gills. We had not only students registering for the class, we actually had an entire lab show up. The student registered for the class, told her lab about it, and the postdocs, the lab manager, and the PI showed up to this class. So that was a little kind of crazy, but awesome that they were so engaged with data visualization. In addition to the regular research faculty and research personnel, we actually had administrators attend this class as well, and representatives from our healthcare wing, which is really surprising because usually our healthcare enterprise is quite distinctly separate from our research enterprise, and this was a really surprising area of overlap. So the impact was quite immediate and really quite positive. We had a lot of enthusiastic response, and we are looking to the future now to try and develop a sustainable model that includes many different levels of service that we're going to cover in just a second. So when we look at the next slide, you'll see that for data viz, the levels of service cover all three: education, consultation, and infrastructure. So here at OHSU, we developed this nano course, which is a small one-credit class, in order to really start talking about data visualization. And we are currently developing a sponsored workshop with our Translational and Clinical Science Institute. And this is actually going to bring a computer science expert in to talk about data visualization in conjunction with a class on R programming skills, and specifically some of the packages used to create some of the best data visualizations out there. So this level of service is something that we received high levels of engagement on and are really pushing forward on the educational level of service. As a consultation project, this has been quite successful because the consultation has led to a variety of projects, including directly working with students on their research projects about how visualizations are affecting things like how people read electronic health records, how people are really interfacing with IRB protocols, with how people are able to better understand the structure of a protein. So these consultations have been really exciting. We've also developed a consultation with our healthcare quality department. So we are not only impacting our students directly, but we're also impacting our healthcare providers here at OHSU. And we've done some consultation work on their data dashboards. So these are the data dashboards that the hospital uses to make judgments and calls on the impact of the services, quality of their patient care, issues about safety. It's really interesting to get involved on healthcare on this data visualization side through the data dashboards that healthcare quality are asking for. And then additionally, as a consultation, we're able to use data visualization to help make projects and departments better able to comprehend the scope and depth of certain types of data metrics that they're being asked to compile as part of accreditation or program review. So this is an interesting level of data visualization that really affects organizational change. So that's a really exciting opportunity. And then on the infrastructure level, data visualization, we're talking to people about whether or not we want to provide software to the university to better accomplish some of these data visualization events. One great thing about visualization is that there are plenty of free software items out there. So in some sense, we can go back to a consultation model to help people learn how to use the software that is freely available, but we are in discussions with people about how to make this part of our infrastructure here at Oregon Health and Science University. So how does this all fit into RDM? Data visualization is a really exciting and fun, engaging way to talk to researchers, healthcare professionals, and students about their work. And while you're having the discussion about data visualization, it's a great opportunity to sneak in conversations about research data management. You cannot visualize data that has been poorly managed. You cannot visualize data that does not have well-defined fields to describe the data. And it's impossible to visualize data that doesn't have some kind of surrounding metadata that helps give it context and clarity. So a discussion about data visualization is, at its heart, a discussion about research data management. So this is a fabulous way to really get people excited about research data management, even if you're not calling it research data management. So this has just been a lot of fun, and it's been one of the most engaging things we've done with researchers. Now, the next thing is data carpentry. For those that don't know about this, this is a 2-day workshop for intense geekery. Data carpentry and its sister organization, Software Carpentry, designed 2-day workshops with flexible modules that are designed to give people an introduction in a boot camp format to a variety of skills that may be useful for software or data work. What we did is we hosted a data carpentry event here at Oregon Health and Science University, and this was insanely popular. We tailored our event to cover specific issues in learning how to use Unix shell, and then some very, very basics in programming in Python. Now, when you work with data and software carpentry, you have the opportunity to really tailor the modules along with the lead instructor to the things that are most relevant to your population. And what I just really want to point out here, if I can get the slides to work, is that the need was that oftentimes the existing resources for this really quick overview do not exist at a lot of institutions. Now this can seem surprising because at many large institutions they have a computer science department, they have an education department, they have every single possible department you can imagine. But when it comes to researchers with boots on the ground that need to get these skills developed quickly in order to use them, there's oftentimes a hole. The resources that are available tend to be for undergraduates at a very basic level, like the Intro to Programming, and they involve long courses that have semester-long commitments and are a very traditional undergraduate experience. And then once you get to the graduate level and beyond, then you have advanced classes in how to program in Python to do specific objectives, or quantitative analysis on a very, very high level on a very specific type of data set. So there's this kind of hole in the middle where you have very, very intelligent people that have advanced research skills in their field of interest that may need to pick up some supplementary skills in some software or data management areas. These boot camps are a fabulous way to maximize the time that these people need to invest to develop these skills, and it's also a fabulous way for the library to really start connecting people and ideas and get a great idea of some of the work that's being done on campus on an intimate level. The people that participated in the data carpentry workshop not only came excited to learn, they also came excited to talk about how the skills that they were developing at this workshop could be used in their future research projects. So as a library, this was a great opportunity for us to gain some further insight into the research projects that are at the university and how we can help them out. So the impact was amazing. It was an overfilled class from all ranks. We had wait lists that developed immediately from the student and researcher side. And in the future, we are trying to develop a collaborative expansion of this model. Data carpentry is technically free if you can wrangle everybody necessary, but there is a small fee that does need to be paid to the data or software carpentry auspices if they are helping you with the wrangling of the instructors. Additionally, you can become a partner with Data and Software Carpentry and do a train the trainer so that people at your institution, for example, your librarians, can offer these workshops in-house. And that is something that we are definitely looking forward to in the future as a way to really expand along this area. So when it comes to levels of service, taking the skills and the format of the data carpentry, we can definitely expand this along an education, consultation, and infrastructure level. So on an education level, definitely continuing the workshops. One thing that we have done is we started a special interest group that spins off of data carpentry to continue development of the skills that people learned in that workshop. This has been a lot of fun. The students have come together and identified a couple of interesting coding projects that they can work on, and next they're going to be tackling some projects from Kaggle, which will be really fun to see how they tackle those challenges and use their newfound skills in fun and interesting ways. Additionally, we are looking to sponsor more workshops in the future, and in addition to a train-the-trainer model and hopefully offering them using our existing manpower, use this as an opportunity to develop instructors here at the university. So this is going to be helping us train people not only in some RDM skills and some data science skills, but also help people that want teaching experience developing that teaching experience. Next is a consultation model. One thing that we have already worked with some people on is how to establish a workshop, just the nuts and bolts of that. So that's kind of an interesting side thing. It's not so much the actual content of the workshop, but just how you can develop these types of things in an educational setting. And then also who to find on campus that knows these skills or might be able to teach, or just the populations of people that need this information. That is valuable information that the library has developed that we can share with other people. And then on the infrastructure, in-house instruction is something that we hope to develop as part of our infrastructure as a library, so that we'll be able to sustainably develop this type of service, which sneaks that RDM in there because it is research data management, but offering it through the lens and the pitch of this is giving you a boot camp to these basic programming skills and data wrangling skills for you to advance your research. So that is a little bit about the data carpentry aspect of things. Next, data rigor and reproducibility, which is really something that is a partnership in education. The National Institutes of Health has mandated that all trainees get data rigor and reproducibility instruction during the course of their education. Now, the NIH has provided some really quite comprehensive modules in these areas, along with some hilarious videos, and these are actually really well produced, so you don't have to worry about some really bad quality video. These are actually, I think, pretty spot on. But these modules are freely available along with discussion material. So this provides a nice framework for each institution to grab this information and then tailor it to a class for their trainees. So the need is that there's an NIH requirement for this. The impact is really dependent on how you take this information and make it not just another hoop to jump through. Everybody has to do the NIH ethics class, and at many institutions this is a dreaded class because it is terribly dull. But there's the opportunity to make this class really engaging. What we did is we worked with the faculty, and we chose faculty that were young and excited, or faculty that were established and well versed in data rigor and reproducibility to come and lead these classes and lead these discussions. And the library was a partner in this, and we helped develop some of the framework for questions that were going to tailor the discussion to some issues in research data management. In the future, we hope to really make sure that some of the things that were brought up in this class are integrated into the requirements, not only for the NIH trainees, but for all trainees at OHSU, whether or not they're funded by NIH grants. All right, so next, there's this brand new requirement for rigorous experimental design and transparency, and this is taking it to the next level. this class is not yet required. It was just announced that it's going to be required for FY17, but this is definitely something that I'm going to get a jump on soon, and we're going to get a working group together to discuss this for potentially offering it as soon as spring term. Again, this is an NIH requirement, and I will send a link along with the announcements for both this requirement and the previous classes requirements. But this is an opportunity for the library once again to step in and have some great discussions about rigorous data management. Without good data management and data planning, you can't make a rigorous experiment design. And when it comes to transparency, this again is integrally tied into good research data management, and this is an opportunity for the library to step in and really demonstrate that not only do they have the expertise in this area, but they can really help researchers with the boots on the ground to make sure that they are doing everything necessary to not only make sure that they meet the NIH standards. I can speak today, I promise. I just need another cup of coffee. But that they also are making sure they understand why this is going to be useful for their research getting more broadly disseminated. So this is something that I think the library should definitely get involved with, and I'm really looking forward to the conversations I'm going to have with students and professors and administrators about making these classes a reality. So looking at the levels of service, obviously education is where this is initially aimed at. So I really am looking forward to developing new classes and integrate into existing opportunities. It's not necessary at every institution to probably offer a separate class for each one of these NIH requirements. It might be easily integratable into existing curricula. But what I'm looking forward to developing is a consultation as a point of need on relevant topics. Again, this is going to be something that is RDM disguised to people that don't necessarily know that lingo, but if they have questions about transparency or rigor and reproducibility, then hopefully we're going to be able to answer those questions as a library. And next, the infrastructure to support this. Many people have subject and liaison librarians. I do feel that the liaison and subject librarians should be well-versed in issues about experimental design and transparency specific to their subject areas. So it is my hope that we are able to develop using our existing infrastructure of liaison models to really develop specific skill sets to address these requirements in the future. So that is looking at it from an infrastructure level. Now, next, we're going to take a look at, just make sure I can advance slides here, and I still can't do that, so if I can get somebody who has the power of the clicker to do it. The next is BD2K, and BD2K stands for Big Data to Knowledge. Now, this is an NIH education initiative. You can go to bd2k.org and you'll get to the NIH website that includes all sorts of information about the variety of initiatives that are spawned under the BD2K umbrella. These include developing outreach materials, developing training grant programs, all sorts of different areas. So the need is that big data is obviously one of the buzzwords of the 21st century. And as big data gets discussed, the question is really, are we developing skills for our trainees to really be able to manage and understand and progress their research projects with big data in mind? So that is the overarching need. The impact that libraries can have is that they can create materials that really help support the BD2K initiative and engage the research community. In the future, we hope that we will be able to focus the scope and mission specific to our institution and provide opportunities that are uniquely tailored to those areas. So here at OHSU, we have 2 BD2K Education Awards, one of which is specifically designed to create curricula for high school and college interns that come to OHSU and provide them with overview of the skills required to really tackle a successful research career with big data. Another one is to create open educational resources to provide people with an overview and then a little bit more of an in-depth look at how data skills are developed. Again, this is research data management at its core, being able to understand the tenets of the data lifecycle and apply them to your research successfully. So if we take a look at the next slide, looking at levels of engagement, so even if you do not currently have BD2K at your institution, you can still be involved with the BD2K movement. And the levels of engagement at the minimal level just involve looking at the BD2K resources that are available online. There are great online modules that are being developed right now. OHSU is in the midst of developing a suite of 32 online modules that address various aspects of data science and big data. So at the minimal level, anybody at any institution can look at the educational resources that are being developed as part of the BD2K initiative. At the next level of engagement is that you can take an online class or in-person courses as available through. But perhaps the high level of engagement that anybody can do is to take open educational resources that are being developed through the BD2K and tailor them to your use. And you can also write BD2K grants. Many of the BD2K grants do involve libraries as key partners in the development of the resources. So I really encourage you to look into the BD2K funding mechanisms in the future. One thing I just want to throw out there is the Force 11 conference, which is the future of e-scholarship and scholarly communications, is going to be held at OHSU or at Portland in 2016 this spring. One of the workshops that we'll be offering is specifically discussing how to take open educational resources and apply them and tailor and target them to your specific institution. Okay, so I am going to next talk about data literacy and integration into education programs. I have really been deeply involved with graduate studies at Oregon Health and Science University, and many graduate institutions across the country are reassessing how their programs are being implemented and what skills they need to provide. This is not unique to OHSU. As I mentioned, graduate programs all over the nation are readdressing what it means to be a successful PhD trainee or a master's trainee or certificate trainee. What really are the skills necessary to succeed in those fields? This conversation that is happening now is a great opportunity for people to get involved with data literacy and integrate into education programs. This is something libraries have been trying to do for quite a while, but because this conversation has revolved around to really focusing on skills, and many of these skills are just speak so strongly to data literacy, this is something that I encourage everybody to get involved with. So it's kind of the unicorn. It is the holy grail to get libraries involved at the most base level of program design so that they are starting with these questions about data literacy and skills that the students may need in data literacy from the ground up. It is a unicorn, but it is a unicorn that is surprisingly obtainable. So the need is to incorporate data literacy in our communities. And the impact that we are currently making is that we are having ground floor incorporation into a program redesign here at OHSU. And the future is that this will prominently place the library as a deep partner in education here at OHSU. So this is something that, again, it sounds like a unicorn, and I have the fancy unicorn on my slide, but I am really pleased at how many places that I've talked to that have said, oh, the library does these data skills. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I think this is an opportunity for everyone to really get re-involved and engaged into data literacy. So education, consultation, and infrastructure. One other thing I want to mention is that we are re-examining the policies of how we are developing skills in our graduate programs. So this is an opportunity for the library to advance data literacy not only in the curricula, but into the policies about how we implement a graduate program and assess a graduate program. So I am running over time, so I'm just going to move on from there. I welcome any questions that we have along this area. So let's continue to move forward, and let's see, can someone advance the slides? So just reviews and researcher education, some things that we've done here at OHSU, data visualization, data carpentry, really taking advantage of the NIH requirements and tailoring them to be as engaging as possible, BD2K initiatives, and then getting involved with data literacy. So those are the areas that I am covering, and I want to quickly take a look at the questions to see if
yeah, and we'll just take a pause here to let people enter questions if they haven't had a chance yet.
Okay. The conference that I mentioned is Force 11, and if you want more information about that conference, go to force11.org, force11.org, And as I mentioned, it's the future of research communication and e-scholarship. And this is a community that is dedicated to discussing how scholarship is changing in this brave new world. So there's a lot of discussion about data citation, about different types of metrics for how we're assessing our research impact, all sorts of really fun and interesting things. The conference will be held this spring in Portland, Oregon. If you go into the conference tab, 416 conference, it is Sunday, April 17th to Tuesday, April 19th in downtown Portland, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. There's some great librarians that are seminal leaders in this conference, in addition to researchers, publishers, all sorts of different people that are involved with the research scholarly communication cycle.
Jackie, we also have a question about specifically at OHSU, how many people we have within the library working in this area. So maybe you can comment on that, and I think it's also important there to emphasize our collaborations outside of the library.
Oh yes, so this is definitely something that is a question I get a lot, because we only have so many FTE, and as librarians we tend to be overloaded already. So we currently have a small team of people that help address these questions in research data management. So I myself have 0.5 FTE dedicated towards research data initiatives, and then we are currently hiring a 1.0 position to specifically work as a liaison and a research data management librarian. So that is something that will be coming online very soon. Of course, that person isn't here yet, so what we've been doing currently is a small working team of people that come from a couple different areas of the library. So there's myself. Robin Champeau obviously works very closely with me from a scholarly communication standpoint, in addition to her expertise as a repository guru at our institution. We also pull from other FTE available to us, including our ontology development group. That is a unique aspect of our library. We have a research wing called Ontology Development Group, and so several people in that group come from research backgrounds and are able to provide assistance as we develop new materials. So the hard FTE involved on this on paper is 0.5 from me, but in reality we pull together from all sorts of different librarians, and when we have consultations, generally we try and incorporate at least 2 librarians with the consultations. So if, for example, they are asking about images, then sometimes I will be involved, sometimes Robin will be involved. She has some experience with image repository development here at OHSU. Sometimes if the questions are about, for example, workflow hacks, we'll involve Kyle Banerjee, who is our actually metadata librarian slash just amazing programming guru. So we pull in people when necessary.
Okay. Yeah, and Jack, this is Robin. I would just add to that, just because there was the specific question, is we're actually a very small library. I think our current librarian count is, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm including you here, is I think we have 11 librarians, and I actually might be too high on that.
I think that's actually right.
It's right? Okay, thanks. So we are actually sort of, in the whole scheme of things, a fairly slim organization, but we also don't have, we're a fairly small university in terms of body count, not sort of research intensity. Research intensity, we're very big in that sense. So we definitely leverage each other's expertise and sort of interest in this to make it happen. And then finally, Jackie, you have one more question here, which I should note that we'll probably address more in part 2 on Thursday, but it is a question about harnessing existing subject relationships. When these positions are in public service units, how to bring in tech service folks who have data skills.
Yeah, so Jen is actually going to speak a little bit more in detail to this, but one thing that we had to do was educate our library internally about the scope and impact of data and the library. And one thing to really emphasize is that data is just the new fancy word for information, and when it comes to information, everyone's like, oh yeah, librarians are very comfortable with that. When you say data, then there's some people that start to get a little freaked out. But reality is that librarians, whether we're on the tech side, the public service side, or any other aspect of librarianship, I mean, we are all here because we like to work with information in some way, shape, or form. So just getting people to realize that data is just a four-letter word for information is the first step in getting people from other areas of the library to be more involved and engaged. Part of this speaks to making sure that management understands how everybody can be engaged. If you have supportive management in the library, then that will help get people a little bit more involved in seeing this as a really kind of future for how libraries are going to run, in my humble opinion. So I think that it's key to train your library to understand what's going on in the research data management landscape, making sure your library understands the value that each and every single person can bring to these issues.
And we do have a few more questions that people have sent in, but we're running a little tight on time. So we're going to try to get through the next two case studies. If we have some additional time, we'll address those questions. But otherwise, we'll handle those in writing and make sure that everyone has access to those. All right. So now we're on to the policy landscape. And this is Robin presenting on this section. So, oops. All right, so while it's just a part of research data management, many interactions with researchers and students about how to be the best stewards of their data are initiated when they learn about and work to comply with research data management and sharing policies, wherein they are being asked to consider and document, often in advance of their scholarship or science, the kinds of data they will produce, how it will be described, where it will be stored, and how it will be shared. And I should note, just because some sort of the tenor of some of the questions that we didn't get to answer, at OHSU this has actually been sort of the landscape of these policies and their existence and growth has really been a coup for us in terms of convincing people internally and externally about the importance of RDM and the library's role. All right, so this environment of carrot and sticks, as I noticed, is often the momentum behind the initial RDM services libraries are building and maturing. We'll dig into these drivers in a moment. I'll go into them in a bit more detail, but they include public and private research funders, journals, and a growing recognition that good data stewardship benefits science, scholarship, and personal use of data sets, higher citation counts, and even unexpected collaborations. So several, as you may know, public and private funders require an investigator to submit a data management plan with the funding application. And even in some cases, the plan is included within the peer review process for those projects. Funders such as the National Science Foundation have had a policy in place for some time, in the NFS case and SF's case since 2011. And in 2013, a memorandum from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy broadened the pool of institutions with policies and in many ways their general scope. So the OSTP memorandum directed all U.S. agencies with R&D budgets greater than 100 million to develop plans for ensuring public access to the papers and digital data resulting from their funding, with many anticipating from their funding. So that's sort of really an immediate but also a really huge future impact in that area. In February 2014, the majority of agencies' plans were published with many anticipating implementation well in sort of fall, winter 2015, but we haven't seen all of that happen. But we're starting to see some of it. And I think it's really important to note, and we've been talking a lot about the science side of things, sort of STEM, but this trend extends beyond STEM. Organizations like the National Endowment for the Humanities also require data management plans and sharing. At Oregon Health and Science University, which is largely NIH funded, so the majority of our researchers, I would say, and even at the administration level, actually haven't really experienced strong data sharing mandates from the NIH, though we know that will change. But they're experiencing the pressure of complying with journal data sharing policies. For example, last year we worked with a neuroscientist to find a solution for providing access to the data accompanying an article she published in Nature Neuroscience, which was a condition of publication, a very strict condition of publication in that instance. In the end, we used our repository, in this case, to host over 4 terabytes of mouse brain images. And I'm not going to go too much into the specifics of that, but Chris will be talking more about data repositories in a moment. Because of this, we wanted to get a better sense of the journal policy landscape. So we started a project to review data sharing policies of biomedical research journals. Thus far, we've scored 184 journals in the top quartile by impact factor or publication volume for the biological sciences as indexed in World of Science. 52 or 28% explicitly require data sharing, and 17% require it as a condition of publication. And in 2013, the entire set of journals I'm reviewing published over 131,000 papers. The journals with explicit data sharing policies published over 9,000 papers in 2013, or about 68%. So while many of the policies I'm evaluating were implemented after 2013, we think these figures demonstrate the potential impact on the scientific literature and on the authors publishing within these journals. Oops. All right, so next slide. In addition to the pressures of funder and journal policies on data management and sharing, some scientific and scholarly communities in general are emphasizing the benefits of being good the benefits of good data stewardship and open data, especially in regards to transparency, reproducibility, and driving new discoveries. For example, in November, the NIH and Wellcome Trust announced the Open Science Context, which will fund the prototype development of up to 6 projects that facilitate data sharing and or data reuse. And the winning prototype will receive additional development funding. So just a quick look, because we are running a little over time, so I'm going to sort of abbreviate this a bit. So how might this look from a service perspective through that lens of tiers of service and types of service that Krista walked us through earlier? Of course, under the education category, we have web guides that articulate, summarize, and even provide alerts to new policies, either from funders or journals. There's disciplinary focused workshops that Jackie sort of spoke to a little bit here that we often provide at OHSU. On the consultation side, this includes such things as data management plan writing and consultation services, which is something that we provide here at OHSU and we're seeing a lot of at other institutions. Assisted data deposit, either to your own homegrown repository or external disciplinary specific repositories. Again, Chris mentioned library FTE on grant budgets. And on the infrastructure side, the DMP tool, institutional built and managed repositories. This is something we're actively exploring at OHSU, and even looking at policy research and formulation. The work we're doing here, for example, to really monitor journal policies is pretty labor intensive, and something we plan to use to sort of really communicate with our community about research data management as seen from the funder and journal perspective. Oops. Just sort of a few words on knowing your environment, which we've talked a little bit about, but it can't hurt to emphasize. I think as with all programs and approaches we have discussed and will discuss, it is important that the resources and services you build to address policy requirements are rooted in an understanding of the particular context of your university and its scholarships, so your efforts can be appropriately targeted. For example, I mentioned at OHSU we're heavily NIH funded, about 65%. And I believe this strategy of sort of this targeted approach can also help with the mountain of information and possibilities that often come with building an RDM-related service. I'm going to go ahead and just gloss over the next slides. These are just examples of some web presence that we have for OHSU, but you'll have these slides. But for the sake of time, I'm going to just go to let Chris take it from here and talk about data repositories.
All right, data repositories. Many libraries are implementing data repositories on their own campuses in order to provide a place for researchers to meet that requirement by grant funding agencies to make their data publicly available. We're going to go through just some brief conceptual questions and topics that you would want to consider before setting up a repository. And the first of which is what types of systems you will need in order to facilitate that storage and access of the data. There are systems available out there, open source systems that you can obtain and host on at your own site, and there are also systems that are hosted by other by companies that you would just kind of pay for, and then that it would be hosted on their servers. The benefits of hosting your own system would be, of course, you have a lot more flexibility in how you can set it up and the types of settings you can provide, including access settings. And then a benefit of a hosted system would be that it's a lot quicker to set up, and it's you probably wouldn't need as many people within your organization helping to maintain that. But of course, there are benefits and drawbacks to each one. You would also want to talk about who will set up the repository. Do you have people within your organization who can do the IT work to actually set up a repository and maintain it, and then assist that with deposit? It takes a lot of people to keep those systems going, and then someone familiar with how to ingest data into a repository and prepare the data set in order to help those researchers get that data into the repository. So those are two important questions to consider. Additional questions to consider are, what type of data will you accept into your repository? Will you just accept anything at all that the researcher wants to submit, or are you going to be select and have an actual, maybe an appraisal and selection policy for your data sets within the repository? So just think through that. Be on the lookout for an upcoming book called Databrarianship, in which I wrote a chapter on how to create a appraisal and selection policy for research data sets. And then the level of curation is important. These are questions such as, will you just accept a research data set from a researcher without any additional work on your part in order to make sure that it's prepared? Does it contain any sensitive information? Do you want to save it in additional file formats so that it might be accessible more over the long term? Do you want to check for make sure it's clean and organized, and does it have adequate metadata? All that stuff, it takes time and effort, and so that's an issue that would need to be addressed. And then, are you going to provide access and preservation, or just one of the, or just preservation? Just preserving preservation won't necessarily mean that the data are accessible over the long term. Access takes more effort in order to maintain over the long term by refreshing file formats over the years as file formats go obsolete. And so that takes additional effort on your part. So I just want to give you one example in the very last minute that we have here of a data repository that I find is very well done, and the Stanford Digital Repository is a good example of a data set that I think is really done well, and a data repository that's really done well. Stanford has been offering this data repository since 2005, so it's been over a decade that this has been in existence. And they host a lot of data, and not only data, but also articles and publications from Stanford researchers. But the total that they have in their Stanford Digital Repository is greater than 230 terabytes. So it's a lot of information. And they have a staff of about 30 people that are maintaining and working on all aspects of this digital repository. So they have a very good example if you're interested in looking about and poking around on their digital repository and see how they do things. It's very well done. And then so you can see that it's got, I've pulled up a couple of different data sets here, and then I just drilled down into one. Let's see here, the Clowns of America International Membership Points Shapefile. And so you may know a researcher whose research project may really benefit from a geospatial data set containing latitude and longitude of every member of Clowns of America. And if you do, I'm happy to inform you that you can download such a data set from the Stanford Digital Repository. So there you go, and we appreciate you coming today and listening to our presentation, and we are out of time for questions now, but please put your questions in the question box. We will be sure to answer them and send the responses out.
Yes, thanks, Chris, for sending it off. So that, again, concludes part one, and in part two, we'll be taking sort of a closer look at really how to execute some of the services and initiatives that we talked about today. Again, apologies that we're sort of out of time for questions, but we will address all the unanswered questions between now and the next webinar. So was an interesting discussion. Information about all ALCTS continuing education opportunities can be found on the ALCTS homepage on your URL on your screen. Upcoming webinars include part 2 of this virtual symposium and the others that you see noted here. If you ever have suggestions for webinars or other continuing education opportunities, they're welcome at any time. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you on Thursday.